31 years ago, this man at my side asked me if I'd start a church here in Garden Grove, and he was so generous, he gave me $500. No, really, this is our friend, Norman Vincent Peale. And we love you. God loves you, so do I. Norman Vincent Peale.
This is perhaps the grandest church in the United States. It's very unique. There's nothing like it anywhere. But he turns it into a family, old-fashioned country church atmosphere. Now, I was raised in little churches in Ohio, and I grew up in Cincinnati, but the church there wasn't all that big. And I get the same feel here this morning in this exotic and sophisticated area as I used to get back in Lynchburg and Bellefontaine and Greenville and Findlay and Cincinnati. I think he is absolutely wonderful. And about that $500 that Ruth and I gave him to start the church, that was a loan. With interest. Now, since he asked me what I was going to talk on and I couldn't think of it, I now think of it. Positive thinking works wonders. And it does too. That is for sure. Inevitably, indubitably. Now, I don't know exactly what that last word means, but I somehow like the sound of it. Whatever your life is this morning, unsatisfactory, unhappy, defeated perhaps, I want to tell you, it doesn't need to remain that way. You're in a place where presides the one who can change everything for you by changing you. He can make you think differently, no longer negatively defeated, bitter, but positive, hopeful, optimistic, victorious. Now, some time ago, I was in Hong Kong and was in the Kowloon section of Hong Kong. My wife knew a dressmaker over there where she said she could get some dresses cheaper than back in New York. I had to remind her of what we had to pay to get to Hong Kong. But a dressmaker establishment was no place for me. So while she was there, I took a walk amidst the crooked little streets of Kowloon, teeming with millions of people. And I suddenly saw before me what was described as a tattoo parlor. And in the window, they had demonstrations of what you could get tattooed on your chest or on your arm or wherever. And of course, they had beautiful girls, mermaids, or the flag of your country. But there was another one that drew my attention. Born to lose. And I was astounded that anybody in his right mind would go into a tattoo parlor and have engraved in his chest, born to lose. So I went into the tattoo shop and I pointed to it and I said, that one. And the man said, take off your coat. I said, no, I don't want it done on myself. But do you mean to tell me that anybody would actually come in here and have that tattooed in his flesh? Born to lose. He said, yes, a few. But I asked, why would they do it? He said, before tattoo on chest, tattoo on mind. That is to say, there's some people, God help them, who believe that they were born to lose. Now, I am a Bible-believing, evangelical, old-fashioned preacher of the eternal gospel of salvation. And I have read the Bible through and through many times, and nowhere do I find it stated that you're born to lose. Man is said to be a sinner. That is true. You're sinners, I'm sinners, but, and there's the great alternative, but we are saved by the shed blood of Jesus on Calvary for our salvation, and we are made victorious, positive spirits through Jesus. This is the victory that overcomes the world, even our faith. To as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become. Rise from what they are now to what they can be, the sons of God. Now, I have in my short life seen many examples of how positive thinking works wonders. I'm thinking of a friend of mine, a woman by the name of Mary Crow. She was born in the country outside of Portsmouth, Ohio. She was one of 9 children. Her father, she says, never made in his life over $50 a week. None of the children ever dreamed of going to college. It wasn't possible. They lived in a very poor home on the outskirts of the city of Portsmouth. Mary's job, being the oldest, was to cook the meals, do the chores, do the washing, because her mother worked along with her father. And one day this girl, just about to graduate from high school, the only member of the family who had ever graduated from high school, was doing the family wash for 10 or 11 people. And she was washing her father's soiled clothes that he wore in the steel mill. Not in an electric modern washing machine, but with the old-fashioned scrub board with Fell's naphtha soap. And suddenly she stopped. She had a vision. She saw herself walking up on the platform of a college at commencement time to receive her diploma from the president of the college. She saw the campus in complete detail. She knew that this is what God had in mind for her. The next day, the family priest, for she was a Catholic, called her into his vestry and he said, "Mary, I have here a scholarship for tuition and board for 4 years at St. Mary's of the Springs College in Columbus. And I've been keeping it for the student in Portsmouth High School who could qualify to its high standards." When that fall she walked into the campus in Columbus, it was in specific and accurate detail exactly like she had seen it in her vision. She had never heard of the science of positive imaging nor of positive thinking, but Jesus Christ had made her a positive thinker. She graduated with the highest marks of her class in that college. Then she had another dream. She saw herself as a very successful insurance agent. Now, this was a day and age in which there were no women insurance agents. So she went down to the Equitable Life Agency in Columbus and told the secretary she wanted to see the manager, and the secretary said, "Why do you want to see the manager?" And she said, "I want to become an insurance agent." The secretary gulped and went in and saw the manager and came back and said, the manager said, "We are not hiring any women." Never had a woman, don't expect ever to have one. Tell her no. She left. She came back the next day with the same request. Day after day she came. That used to be called in America persistence, perseverance. It's now called hang in there. One day the manager came in, saw her sitting there and said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "I'm waiting for a job as an insurance agent." He said, "I told you we'd never hire a woman, and you don't know anything about insurance anywhere, and you don't know anybody in Columbus who could buy a policy. Goodbye." Then she went down to a bank. Her roommate in college was the banker's daughter. She'd heard that the banker had many policies with this company, and she asked him to speak to the manager. The next time she went into the office, the manager received her. He said, "How'd you know Mr. Jones, the banker?" She said, "Well, I have connections." He gave her a job with a rate book, and he said, "Go on out and starve to death." 25 years later, the same manager presided over a testimonial dinner to Mary Crow as the biggest producer that the Central Ohio Agency had ever had. And one day in New York, I went with her up to the office of the Equitable Life Assurance Society, and the top executives nationally gave her a luncheon as the greatest agent the company had ever had. Don't tell me that positive thinking doesn't work wonders. So what do you want to be? Ask yourself that question. Don't dodge it. What do you want to be? Then dedicate it to Jesus Christ along with your whole life. And don't doubt it. Believe. And then form a picture in your mind of that goal. Hold it tenaciously in the conscious mind until by process of intellectual osmosis it sinks into the unconscious, and when it gets into the unconscious, you have it because it will have all of you. I would go so far as to say that if you are a complete, dedicated follower of Jesus Christ, you can do anything you really want to do with your life. And don't go out of here today bowing and scraping before circumstances and difficulties. Go out of here walking tall, reaching for the sky with the crown of your head, unafraid. And if you have any doubts about it, go back and look in the mirror. Now, some of you, that will be a far more pleasant experience than others. Look at yourself and say, "Look here, son. Look at here, girl. Who are you anyway?" And the answer will come back, "You are a child of God, created in His own image. Not born to lose, born to win." This is the victory that overcomes the world. That's a good one to say every time you're faced with a difficulty. Just draw yourself up and say that this is the victory that overcomes the world, even my faith. Now, this is not bravado. This is scientific Christianity that can be demonstrated and that works. I personally wouldn't go for anything unless it works. And I know this works. Now, I had a hard time coming to that. As a boy, as I say, I had a lot of inferior feelings, and I had to battle it through. When I was in the 5th grade in Cincinnati, I had a teacher by the name of George Reeves. He was an enormous man, well over 6 feet, and he was a teacher of the 5th grade. And he was a whimsical kind of a character. Every once in a while, he would, for no reason or other that we could figure out, he would shout out, "Silence!" And when he demanded silence, he got silent. He had a hand like a ham, I can well remember. I can still feel the print of it. Then he would go to the blackboard, and in a sweeping gesture, he would write the word C-A-N''T. Then he would put the chalk down and dust off his hand and say, "Okay, what do I do now?" We knew what he wanted, so we would chant back, "Knock the T off the cant." He would pick up the eraser, and with a sweeping gesture, he would rub out the apostrophe and the T, so that the word C-A-N, can, stood out clear and distinct. Then he would say, "Young ladies and young gentlemen, I never knew him to call us boys and girls. Let that be a lifetime lesson to you. You can if you think you can." And then he was long before the law that seems to tell us that there can be no mention of the Bible or God or Jesus Christ in the public school, one of the most stupid things that ever happened in this country. He would say, "Let me tell you something, and don't you ever forget it as long as you live. I can do all things through Jesus Christ, who gives me the strength." Now, I guess that must have been 60 years ago. But I never did forget it. Don't you ever forget it either. Positive thinking works wonders. I love you. God bless you, everyone.